Reinhilde, what are the trends that you've observed in terms of how Asia has become a rising contributor to scientific research?
So, first important key trend is that overall the scientific output is growing here. So we building up new scientific knowledge here. But what's particularly more striking is where this new science is actually being created here, and why we previously really had a very strong influence of the US playing an important dominant role here. Europe also important and catching up here. A major trend of the last decade is really the rise of Asia here. And with Asia, it's not so much Japan, which was already a traditional player, but it's really new Asian countries here. This is holds in general. So this is countries like China, Singapore, Korea, also India to some extent here. But within the Asian rise here, there is particularly, of course, the rise of China, which really stands out here, with very important growth rates and consistent growth rates over time here, such that actually, while they were coming from a very low position here, by now they're already the second largest country right after the US here in terms of scientific publications. Scientific publications calculated by Thomson Reuters here. So these are really in international journals here and exclude the purely local journals here. So that's really very impressive, that rise here.
And what are the factors that have been behind that growth? Has it been as cut and dry as more funding?
It's partly also very much of a targeted policy of the Chinese economy to really use science as a way to build their competitiveness and their strength here. So it's very much a targeted policy here that you also see to the extent that they really target particular areas in science that are much more helpful for their economic development here. So their strength is very strong in engineering, in material sciences, in chemistry, much less so in other areas like social sciences. Biomedical is also, so they really target it to particular areas here where they really want to build their scientific capacity in terms of what they think they need for their own industrial build-up here. So it's definitely, there is an area, a strong area of government policy here that's also reflected in budget spent on this here. But on the other hand, I would also not underestimate the importance of private funding here. For instance, this flow of Chinese bachelors for international studies as a master of PhD here. Most of that is actually privately funded here and doesn't go through foreign subsidized schemes here. So there is also definitely lots of private funding that's supporting this rise of science too, particularly in their training of PhDs and researchers here.
So what does this geographical shift in scientific research coming from Asia mean for the corporate world?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of concern both in the US and also in Europe in the sense that maybe we are losing out through this science rise of Asia, we're losing out in terms of competitiveness and particularly in terms of innovation-based competitiveness here. Is this indeed a worry here? Well, first of all, it's clear that if Asia builds up its own science capacity here, Chinese companies will increasingly be able to use this scientific input also for their own corporate innovation activities here. And so we will be increasingly seeing, and we are already seeing a number of Chinese companies really rising also in terms of their innovative potential here, not just absorbing the technologies that are already out there, but also developing their own technologies here. So that we definitely see here. But what we also see is that still most of the innovation activities that are going on in Asia are driven by European and US companies here, the big multinationals that are locating their R&D activities increasingly to Asian markets here, partly because because they want to be close to the market here, but also partly because they know that there is a strong rise of scientific capabilities here that they can access to if they locate their R&D activities there as well. So a lot of the corporate R&D that's currently being built up in Asia is actually our own companies locating their R&D activities there and taking advantage of the rise of the scientific capacity, and particularly the large number of researchers, well-trained researchers that they can get access to. And then the question is, what is the implication of our companies moving there for our competitiveness here? And so far the studies actually show that this strengthens our own companies here if they go abroad here, and whatever they do there, they can actually have positive spillovers on their positions here. So it's the best ones that go and they're also able to benefit from that, so it doesn't really go to the detriment of whatever they do here at home. On the contrary, it seems to enforce their positions here. So in that respect, I think the implications are for the West, for the US and Europe here, to actively take the opportunities that this new globalization actually brings here, but make sure that the innovations that can be created with these new capacities here will be to the advantage of the European economy here, and that requires strong companies that can take this as an opportunity here to create value here.